Alright, hi guys. Today I'm going to talk about what you can do with wire to change the surface texture of it. So you can flatten it, you can add texture to it, all to add some decorative details to the surface. So you'll notice that I have some different pieces here. These three have already formed into some different shapes that you might possibly use. And I did that just using my round pliers, my flat pliers, my needle nose pliers, and just bending. We practiced a little bit of that already as well. These are all done with 14 gauge wire. So it's thicker wire. It's stuff that I can't really manipulate well with my hands, so that's better for things that need a lot of structure, or if you want a bigger, bolder design. This wire is only 18 gauge, so it's a lot thinner, and I can still bend it with my hands. Depending on what you're trying to do, you want to really think about the type of wire you choose, because if I were to use something that was really, really thin, such as some of the colored wires that we've used to do some wire wrapping, you can't really flatten this, and if you do hammer on it a lot, you will just break it or get some of the coloring to disappear. So anyway, I'm going to start using a hammer. This is a Planishing hammer. So I'll show you at the end, we've got a flat end here, and then we've got a rounded tip here. So you can get two different effects when you hit your metal. So I'm just going to start with this one, and I'm just going to kind of do a tapered flat end. Maybe I like the look of the curve on this one, but I'm going to just start hitting it. If you notice, I have the steel block underneath it. You always want to have a steel surface underneath it because that is giving pressure back when you're hitting on it. And obviously, ideally, I don't want to hit the steel hammer to the steel plate. That's how you get some bumps in here, and then those translate into your metal later. Alright, so I've just done a little bit on this one side. So if you take a look, you can see how now it's thinner over here and it gets thicker. It also just has a different kind of feel and look at the end. It's a little more like organic. If I wanted to, I could keep going and get it even a little bit more thick on that end. Now the nice thing about this is it's just visually interesting to kind of switch it up. You also could drill a hole through there and then have another piece next to it. Let's say I wanted to attach it to this piece in a chain. If they both had those ends, I could then drill holes and have like an S-hook to connect them together, or some other kind of wire or thread. Some other things that you can do, you can use the other end of the hammer, which I'll show you, and that just kind of creates some different texture. So this is kind of an all-over look. You get a lot of different texture. I'm trying to find a way where I can show you, but you really can see a lot of different texture on the surface. So some people use this to make just some, interesting shadows, and the light plays off of it differently. The final one that I'm going to show you is how you can actually use texture tools. So these can be used on sheet metal. They can also be used on wire. I'll show you on sheet metal first because it's a little easier to see. So we have these in a variety of different shapes. You can look for different ones. But you basically hold it on the surface, and then you would use a mallet, because we never want steel to touch steel, and I would start to hit it. So this is just a very simple shape. You can probably see that one mark right there. If I did a repetition of those shapes, you can get some different surfaces as well. And just to show you with the hammer what it looks like if you do that all over pattern. You can see you can get kind of an interesting finish on that metal. It's just something that adds a little bit of something special. So one other thing that you need to know, let's say I wanted to flatten this and then I wanted to bend it so I could make a hook. I can't really take my pliers and bend it now because this is work hardened, meaning that because I pressed on it with the hammer for so long, this is very, very stiff. So most of the time, in between phases, you want to go back and forth between this and annealing your metal with heat. So I could take this, use my torch, anneal the metal, and then I could come back and manipulate it a lot more, or I could keep hammering on it. At a certain point, the hammering doesn't do as much if you don't anneal your metal. So typically, you would make your shapes, things that you're thinking of using, anneal them, and then you'd start to flatten them or add texture to them, just because the metal is softer, so it's easier to manipulate. All right, those are just some beginning things to think about as far as flattening your metal or adding texture. See you next time.